All right, everyone, get ready because today we are going deep, deep into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
It is published way back in 1936.
Wow, that's almost 100 years ago.
I know, right? You'd think it'd be super outdated, but honestly, so much of what he says about human nature, well, it's kind of timeless.
Definitely.
We've got some really interesting excerpts lined up, so let's see what nuggets of wisdom we can unearth about handling relationships, even today.
Sounds good. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. So right off the bat, Carnegie just comes out and says it.
What's that?
Criticism is futile.
Hmm, bold statement.
It is, and he
Yeah.
really drives it home with this comparison between Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft.
Oh, interesting. What about them?
Well, Taft, he really let criticism get to him,
Yeah.
really impacted his relationship with Roosevelt.
Yeah.
But Roosevelt, he was like a master at handling it. It just rolled right off him. So what was the difference? Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I think that's something we all struggle with.
Totally.
What does Carnegie say?
Well, he argues that even when you're right, criticizing someone often just triggers defensiveness. They shut down. They don't want to listen. They don't want to change. They don't even really want to connect with you anymore.
Right, so it's counterproductive.
Yeah,
Even if you think you're helping.
exactly. It's like, have you ever been telling a story and someone corrects your grammar?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
It's so annoying.
It is.
Because you end up focusing on the correction, not the actual story.
Totally, totally. Makes you feel like you're back at school or something.
Right. It puts you on the defensive. So, okay, if we're not supposed to criticize, what are we supposed to do?
What's the alternative?
Well, remember that story about John D. Rockefeller Jr. and Edward Bedford, his business partner?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so Bedford, he made this investment and it was a bad one. He lost like $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big mistake. But instead of, yelling at him or whatever, Rockefeller focused on the positive. He was like, hey, you managed to save 60% of the investment.
Oh, so instead of dwelling on the 40% loss, he chose to appreciate the 60% that was saved.
Yeah, exactly. And Carnegie calls that the art of appreciation.
I like that. It's a good way to frame it.
It is, right. And it's not just about business deals or whatever. It's relevant to, like, everyday life.
How so?
Well, Carnegie tells this funny story, might be fictional, but it makes you think. It's about this farm wife who served hay for dinner every single night.
Hey, like for horses?
Yep, like actual hay. But the thing is, her family, they never complained, so she just kept on serving it.
Oh, wow.
It's a funny story, but it makes you think, are we appreciating the hay that people are serving us? Are we taking things for granted?
That's a good point. We often forget to express appreciation, even for small things.
Yeah, we just assume people know, but, a little appreciation can go a long way. And this kind of ties into another key principle, which is having genuine interest in other people.
Right, like actually caring about what they have to say.
Exactly. And Carnegie tells this charming story about Ralph Waldo Emerson and his son trying to get a calf into the barn.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. They were pushing and pulling, but the calf wouldn't budge.
They were so focused on what they wanted, they totally missed what the calf wanted.
And then the maid came out and just gently led the calf into the barn, right?
Yes. Just by understanding the calf's perspective, she was able to do what they couldn't. Sometimes we just need to get out of our own heads and try to see things from the other person's point of view.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, how often are we making that same mistake in our own interactions?
All the time, probably. And Carnegie highlights this contrast really well with the example of that poorly written radio ad agency letter.
Oh, right. The one that was all about the agency and nothing about the recipient.
Exactly. It's all me, me, me,
Yeah.
bragging about their achievements and completely ignoring what the recipient might actually be interested in.
No wonder it didn't work.
Then we see Edward Vermeulen's rewrite. And it's like night and day. He completely flipped the script. He focused on how working with the agency would benefit the recipient.
So it's about thinking win-win, not just trying to force your own agenda.
Exactly. Now, you ready for my favorite part?
Hit me with it.
Carnegie gives us this magic phrase, a verbal judo move that can stop an argument in its tracks.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Ready? I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. Boom, argument over. What do you think?
It's disarming. You're acknowledging the other person's feelings, validating them, even if you disagree.
Right. It's like saying, hey, I see you, I hear you, and your feelings make sense. It takes the wind right out of their sails.
And it opens the door for a real conversation instead of just a battle of egos.
Exactly. Sometimes, our need to be right is the biggest obstacle to connection and understanding. Speaking of which,
Oh no, what did you do?
I'm going to confess something. Remember how we were talking about Louisa May Alcott? Well, I made this huge blunder. I publicly stated that she was born in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Totally wrong. And the letters I got, well, let's just say some folks were not happy with me.
It happens. But it just proves even we need to be reminded of these principles sometimes, right?
Absolutely. We can all get caught up in our own opinions and forget to see things from the other person's perspective. But hey, that's why we're doing this deep dive, right? To learn and grow and hopefully become better at navigating these tricky human interactions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So are you ready to move on to 6 ways to make people like you?
Lead the way.
All right, so we're diving into 6 ways to make people like you. Now, we could go through all 6, but I think we
Yeah.
can all agree, ain't nobody got time for that.
Definitely not. Especially when we've only got so much time in this deep dive.
Right, so we picked out a couple that, we thought would really resonate with you guys.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's first on the list?
Okay, this first one is a classic, remembering names.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It is, and Carnegie, he tells this great story about Jim Farley.
Who's that?
He was like this political powerhouse back in the day, and he was famous for remembering everybody's name. Like, everybody.
Wow. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
Haha, right. But the thing is, it wasn't just a trick. It was like this secret weapon for him
How so?
because it made people feel seen,
Yeah.
like they mattered.
It makes sense. When someone remembers your name, it's like they're acknowledging you as an individual, not just another face in the crowd.
Exactly. It feeds into this basic human need to feel significant. Like, even for me, when I go to my local coffee shop
Yeah.
and the barista remembers my order.
You know, that oat latte with an extra shot.
Exactly. It makes me feel like seen, like I'm not just another customer to them.
So it's about more than just remembering a name. It's about making that person feel valued.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so principle number 2,
Bring it on.
being a good listener.
Ugh, another one of those easier said than done things.
Oh, it is. But it's so important. Carnegie, he cites this study by the New York Telephone Company
Okay.
where they analyzed hundreds of phone conversations and they counted how many times the word I popped up.
Oh gosh, I bet it was a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Like almost 4,000 times in 500 conversations.
That's insane.
I know, but it just goes to show how much we love talking about ourselves.
We're all guilty of it.
We are, but think about the impact we could have if we shifted that focus, if we genuinely listened to what other people had to say.
Totally. I mean, everyone has a story to tell.
Right. And Carnegie actually shares this inspiring story about Edward Bach.
Remind me who that is again?
He was this guy who started out as like a Western Union messenger boy, but he ended up becoming a successful magazine editor.
So how did he do it?
Well, his secret was he would write to famous people, but instead of talking about himself, he would ask them about themselves.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to talk about themselves.
It is, and it shows that you're genuinely interested. He made those famous people feel like experts.
Yeah, giving them a platform to share their wisdom.
Exactly. And those connections, they probably helped him a lot in his career.
So sometimes the key to success isn't about being the loudest voice in the room.
Right.
It's about being the one who listens the most.
That's a great takeaway. All right, are you ready to move on to part 3, where we talk about how to win people to your way of thinking?
I'm ready when you are.
All right, be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Sounds intense, right?
It does have a bit of a dramatic flair, doesn't it?
It does, but you don't have to be like CEO or anything to apply these principles.
Yeah, it's really about navigating any situation where you need to guide someone, maybe offer a different perspective.
Exactly. Without like starting World War III.
Exactly. So how do we do that?
Well, first up, we've got letting the other person save face. And to illustrate this one, Carnegie tells this story about Charles Steinmetz.
Now, who was he again?
He was this brilliant engineer at General Electric, like a genius, but not so great with people.
Oh.
So the classic brilliant mind, but struggles with social stuff.
Yep. And his management style, well, it was causing some problems.
I can imagine.
Right. So they had this dilemma, this guy is super valuable to the company, but his people skills are lacking. So what do? Demote him. Fire him.
I'm guessing they found a more elegant solution.
They did. This is where saving face comes in. They created this whole new position for him, consulting engineer.
Oh, clever.
Right. So he could step back from managing people, which he wasn't great at, and focus on what he was good at, which was, being a brilliant engineer.
So they found a way to utilize his strengths while still addressing the issue. Everybody wins.
Exactly. And Carnegie also shares another example. This time it's an accounting firm, and they had to let go of a bunch of employees after tax season, which is, never fun.
Yeah, that's a tough situation all around. How did they handle it?
Well, instead of just being like, see ya,
Yeah.
cold and impersonal.
They really tried to make it more humane. They sat down with the employees, explained the situation, offered support with finding new jobs, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's a lot more compassionate than just handing out pink slips.
Right. And think about the impact of that,
Yeah.
Instead of those employees walking away feeling betrayed and resentful,
Yeah.
they felt understood and even cared for.
It's amazing how much of a difference a little empathy can make.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the last principle?
Last but not least, making the fault seem easy to correct. And this one ties back to what we were talking about earlier, focusing on the positive, giving encouragement.
Right, like instead of dwelling on the problem, focus on solutions.
Exactly. It reminded me of this friend of mine. She was learning to dance, and she had 2 different teachers.
Oh.
Yeah. One teacher, he was always pointing out her mistakes, made her feel clumsy, discouraged. But the other teacher, she focused on what my friend was doing well, praised her progress, made the steps seem easy to learn.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. My friend, she totally blossomed with that second teacher. Her confidence just grew and grew.
Because she felt supported and encouraged, not criticized and judged.
Exactly. It shows how powerful our beliefs about ourselves are, and how much those beliefs can be shaped by others. Like, remember that story about Ely Culbertson?
The bridge expert?
Yeah. Apparently, he wasn't even that good at first. But his wife, Josephine, she believed in him. She encouraged him. And eventually, he became, like, a world champion.
So sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. That's really powerful.
It is. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, delving into this almost 100-year-old book.
It's amazing how relevant it still is.
Yeah.
Human nature, doesn't really change that much.
It doesn't. And I hope everyone listening, you've picked up a few tips and tricks for handling relationships, avoiding conflict, all that good stuff.
And as always, it's about being sincere, being genuinely interested in others. That's what makes a real difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep diving deep and remember the power of human connection is within your grasp. Happy learning, everyone.